Good morning traders, Joseph here from Eightcap. We're just having a look at the US 30 in front of us. Growth in the number of infections outside of China and expanding infection cases in Europe have induced further selling on global markets last night. So we did have a little bit of an edgy session during the European trade. Markets were trying to stabilize, but things changed dramatically once the US session came in. We saw there was a rally on US 30 close to 1% before things kicked off again, and we saw a new decline of 3%. Now the Dow lost over 3%, so the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq lost around 2.77% for last night's trade, and the ASX continues to be sold extremely heavily. We are seeing a bit of a fight back at this point, but it's still down 1.7% at this stage in the morning, and the ASX 200 CFD we're seeing a rally of 0.80%. So this has definitely started a correction. Now if we just have a look at the current situation on the daily chart, we can see what's been a really glorious uptrend for a very long period of time. The last real big corrections we saw were back here in this stage here in 2018, and then we saw another one in another main correction here, which really started to get going in 2018 as well, and 2019 up until 2020 we've seen basically very nice one-way traffic. So at the moment we are seeing from the high set not too long ago, we've seen a fall of around 8%. So coronavirus has definitely been an influence, but also we have to look at just the weight of how high and how strong the market was. And as we saw last time, the trade war was really the influence, and rates were another key component for those corrections we saw last time. So markets always like a reason when they are at a extreme value point, and it doesn't take much to sort of get them going. When selling starts, it sort of can become its own animal, and cascades just start to develop. So we'll have to keep an eye on this, as it's definitely turned into a correction. Now, talk about gold. The gold was quite interesting last night. It sort of did something a little bit different. So we've seen gold rallying continuously with fear in the equity markets, but last night we saw a move off in gold. Now this may just be profit taking. It generally really wasn't due to anything, so to speak, of a very strong USD. USD was mainly lower to a degree against all the major currencies last night, including the yen, and gold also just after that strong fade we saw the day before. After that drop, we did see a move lower, so finishing quite a healthy move for sellers, 1.46% lower, and we are seeing a little bit of buying so far this morning. Talking about the USD, so we saw the Aussie dollar basically held a positive close, and we've seen a little bit of buying so far this morning, but that current trend still firmly planted down. The euro had a good night last night, really just going against some of the aspects of overall. Now this may be the case that they're worried that due to the impact on the EU, we may see rate cuts, so that may be something that's been thought about now with the euro rising, that the ECB may cut rates due to issues not only with growth but also issues with the coronavirus spreading so rapidly through Europe, and what type of impact it's going to have on the EU, and if it's going to hurt the EU further, and it's not really at the best place at the moment. So we saw a bit of a move down during the Asian session into the European session, but it changed, and we saw a swing around and a gain of just under 0.30%. And the pound also had a solid night last night, adding just over 0.62%, and just over 0.60%, and just getting back up to those highs we saw set back in on the 19th of the 2nd. And the dollar CAD, now we had lower oil, but that didn't really help the dollar CAD. We saw a bit of a pullback, and this was going back to before about the USD not being exceptionally strong last night, so we had a bit of a fall there. And oil started positive, well, had a small positive move, but then fell away quite heavily. So ongoing, again, coronavirus worries on demand, and the spread of the coronavirus now into the Middle East didn't do any good, wonders for the confidence in oil traders. So we saw a 3.22% drop on the WTI, and we did test that, and it started to get back to testing that low there. So if oil breaks that low, we're starting to drop back into low, continuation levels. Break at this level here with a close anywhere back in that $48 range starts to set up, continuation worries that this market could be heading lower. And we're talking about then going back to 2018 with some of those lows, but that's a fair way away from where we're sitting at the moment. It's still contained in this consolidation. It would need to break out of that to really set up continuation ideas. So again, another night of quite heavy selling in some markets. Forex has been a little bit surprising with some of the holding that we are seeing. We did see a bit of interest in the yen last night. The Aussie came off against it. The euro as well came off against it, and the pound held its ground. It's holding up quite well. So the yen definitely reverted back to a bit of safe haven status. On 50% of the safe haven book, and just going back to USD again, we did see another move down. So retrace that entire move we saw up last week. Sellers weren't able to hold that low, and we did see a bit of a fight back. But again, last week's strong rally in the dollar yen has now been basically pulled back, and we will have to see now is that that could have been seen as really a real impulse and higher that was unsustainable, and now we've seen a return back to a value point. So could have, that's really starting to appear to be a very overstated and overvalued move based on what traders have had to say about that in the last 3 sessions. So we would like to see possible support coming from this band here, and if we don't see a new move back in there, we'd like to see that low hold just to sort of reaffirm that buyers are still interested and active in that market. So now we did have a look at the euro yen last night in a report, mid-afternoon, and we did start looking at a possible high low setting up. Now sellers flat out rejected that. We saw a very strong move back down halfway into that engulfing bar we saw last week. We did see a very strong pullback though from there, nearly 0.4%, and we would like to see now if buyers are able to continue the hold. We still have this trend break. We are watching that trend break, and we'd like to see this area here, what buyers are able to do, and if we are able to see a new higher low setup and a new short-term push by buyers to sort of signify that that engulfing bar here is more than just a one-day event, and that it is a possible momentum swing. But for now, it's still really up for buyers to prove and confirm that. So that's it for now. We're really starting to wonder now if we're going to see some value buying in stocks. Basically, we've seen some really, we've seen basically on the ASX 1, 2, 3 flat out down days, and we've seen quite a similar story over here, 1, 2, 3, 4 flat out down days, and the German 30 is the same story. So we're really starting to wonder now, is it going to be one of those sharp counter rallies that we do see after fast breaks lower, and if we're going to start to see buyers come back and pull in some value. But beware of those fast counter rallies. They do need time to confirm. They can set up what's called a bull trap, where buyers race back in for value, and they just basically feed ready sellers who are waiting to get out, and then that can start a very sharp cascade. So you have a very sharp move up, stops. Sometimes you have a good wick of rejection, and then bang, it comes down again. So do beware of that if we do see some strong buying. Sometimes it is good to see a bit of consolidation develop with maybe a higher low or a double bottom, just to signify buyer strength and in demand at that level. So interesting times. We hope you have a fantastic trading day, and until tomorrow, good trading and bye for now.